Welcome back to Niemer Wealth Coaching. If you're new here, my name's Devin Niemer. I've been in real estate for over 20 years and sold over $2 billion worth of real estate. But today we are going to be talking about why I went from being an agent to being an investor. And the real short answer of it is that one deal can be over 300 commissions. That's not a typo. I didn't misspeak. This is a real deal that I'm going to break down in this video, and it's still not my largest deal. If you watched my last video talked about when I was 19 years old, I did a deal with $2 million in profit. This video is going to be talking about a deal that I did that had a $3.5 million profit. So I'm going to break that one down for you. But this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the downside of being an agent and the upside of being an investor, and what the differences are between the two, and why I made the switch from being an agent to being an agent investor. Now notice, I didn't say only investor, because you could make substantial profits as an agent. You have tools, you have resources, you have a sphere of influence, you have people that you could tap into to raise capital, you have partners, potential partners. We're going to be talking about all of that in this video. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is that there's two types of investors. The first is called a passive investor. The second is an active investor. When I do my coaching, I'm coaching you on how to be the active investor. But to better understand the active investor, let's talk about the passive investor real quick. So the passive investor is somebody who wants to put up money and get a positive return on that money. That's why they're investing. If they were going to lose the money, they wouldn't do it. So they're looking for a positive return. But they don't want to do any work. And maybe it's because they don't have the time. Maybe they don't have the knowledge. Whatever it is, they just want to put up their money and get a return, and that's it. That's not what I teach. I teach how to convince these people to give you money. But the main thing I teach is how to be an active investor. The active investor is going to spend time and money, and they're going to put together deals that are highly profitable. How profitable? Well, I'm going to break down one deal that's worth 300 commissions. Passive investors, they have options. They could put money towards treasury bonds, for example. But the problem with that is that the yield that they're going to get on the treasury bond is lower than the cost of their mortgage. Their mortgage is a higher interest rate than what they would get paid on investing. So it would make 0 sense for them to borrow against the mortgage and turn around and buy treasury bonds with it. Now, why do I even bring up borrowing against a mortgage? Because if you are an active investor, if you are a deal syndicator, you're putting deals together, you're raising capital, it is much easier to raise capital from passive investors who have equity as opposed to just cash. There's a lot less people that have cash on hand, and there's a lot more people that have equity. How much equity? There's $11 trillion worth of untapped equity in real estate that people own. The average home has $300,000 worth of equity in it. 40% of homes are owned free and clear. 80% have enough equity that they could borrow against it to be an investor. So 8 out of 10 homeowners have the ability to be a passive investor. They just don't know it. Because if they're going to borrow to buy a treasury bond, it's a waste. It makes no sense. But if they're going to borrow and invest it in a very profitable deal, now it makes sense. But they need someone, potentially you, to be that active investor, the deal syndicator, who's going to raise capital, find the deal, put the deal together, get the offer accepted, do the deal evaluation, do your due diligence while you're in escrow, then manage the project after you take ownership, and bring it all the way to completion, either to a full-on build-out, which this one is not a full-on build-out. This is literally at the purchase, I made a profit as large as 300 commissions. So we'll get to that one in a second. But that's what they're looking for as a passive investor. Where can I put it where there's a high enough yield to justify borrowing against the mortgage to put it into a good investment? If you are going to be an active investor, you are the person who needs to know where to find the deals. As a real estate agent, you're uniquely qualified to find deals. Why? Because your job is to look through the MLS, understand comparisons, understand how to write offers, understand what sellers are thinking about on the other end when you make that offer, you're uniquely qualified versus any random person off the street and saying, hey, do you want to be a real estate investor, right? You have a lot more knowledge. In fact, this is the reason why a lot of states don't allow people to do wholesale. Wholesale deals is where you get a deal under contract and sell the contract. There are states that outright ban it, and there's states that say, okay, well, you can do 1 in a year, or you could do 2 in a year, you could do 5 in a year. They have different limits in each state. They want you to have a real estate license. Why? Because you, as a real estate agent, have a higher amount of knowledge and a higher level of duty to the people out there that you're required to have a license because you have something to take away if you screw people over, right? That's the whole premise behind having a license, is it limits what someone can and can't do. And if you violate you do things that you're not allowed to do, they take away your license, right? And so you're uniquely qualified because you have a license. So let's get into the deal that I did. One deal that could be worth 300 commissions. And again, this isn't my largest deal. It's just the one I chose for this example. So I was sending letters to homeowners that had properties that they could be torn down to build townhomes. Okay, I sent hundreds of letters out. One person responded. So they have their lot, okay? They have their house, okay? And they responded to the letter and said, I'm interested in selling. What's your offer? And I said, well, your lot is not quite big enough. But if you can convince both of your neighbors to sell, now I have enough land to do what I want to do. And he said, okay, let me see if I can get them to accept your offer. What was my offer? Each house was worth $550. $550 for each one. Okay, so $550 times 3, that is $1,650,000. So all three of them combined as houses were worth $1,650,000. I was paying $635,000. So I'm paying them $635,000 times 3 is $1,009,000. I'm overpaying for their houses by about 15%. You know, maybe someone in the comments could do the actual math, but just off the top of my head as I'm looking about it, I'm offering them 15% more than their house is worth, which means they're super happy. They bought their house for, each one bought at different prices, but between $150,000 and $300,000 is what they paid for their houses, and I'm turning around offering them $635,000 for each house. They're taking their profits, super happy, and they're going to go buy another house with it and have money left over, and then they're getting 15% over market. But what none of them stop to ask is, how much is the land worth? And the thing that I told the first homeowner is true. His land on its own wasn't worth that much because there wasn't enough land to really build anything. However, with all three lots, think of Monopoly, right? You need to have all three on the same street, right? By having all three, now there's value there, right? You put up the green houses, tear it down, put up the red hotel. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So with all three combined, I could build 20 townhomes. And the comps, just like you can look up comps on the house, you can look up comps on land. And what were the comps on the land? For townhome land, $150,000 per buildable unit. I can get 20 units. 20 times $150,000 is $3 million. So I'm paying $635,000, but it's worth $1 million each. So just looking at it, I'm paying 37.5% under market. They think I'm paying 15% over market. And comparison of what the house is worth to what the land is worth, it's not quite double because 550 times 2 is $1,001,000 and this is $1 million, but it's pretty close to double, and they didn't know that. Now, I'm still a real estate agent, but I was a real estate agent at the time that I put this deal together, and I was licensed in California when I did it. So I had to make a disclosure to them that said Devin Niemer is a licensed real estate agent in the state of California in business to make as large of a profit as possible. He does not represent you in any way. Hereby recommends that you get your own counsel, including but not limited to a real estate broker, financial advisor, tax attorney, or any other professional as deemed qualified by the seller. So what did they do? They went out and they hired an agent. The agent runs comps on the house. The agent says your house is worth $550. He's paying $635. He's an idiot for spending 15% over market. Not my job to educate them that the land in combination is actually worth $1 million. That's not my job. They have their own representation. They hired their own agent. Their agent failed them. Not my responsibility. So, if it's worth $1 million times 3 is $3 million, and I'm paying $1.9 million, then we have $3 million as the purchase, okay? And cross this out because it's not what I paid, it's just what it's worth. So we have $3 million. It should have been the other way around. $3 million minus 1.9, but that gives you $1.1 million in profit. I was 21 years old when I put this together. It's not like my first deal, I was 19. Okay, this was a couple years later. I was 21 when I bought these properties. 1.1 million from 18 years ago. It's not going to be quite 4 times, right? Because the quick math on inflation and property value increase is doubling every 10 years. It doesn't exactly double in 10 years, it's slightly under. But if you go from 1.1 million and adjust for inflation, you're looking at above 3.5 million. And you take 3.5 million and you say, okay, how many transactions as a real estate agent would that take to get $3.5 million? And it's roughly 300 commissions. Maybe more, maybe less, depends on your market, depends on a lot of factors. But 300 commissions or one of these deals, which would you rather do? That is my very simple answer for why I went from being an agent to being an investing agent. Because when you're an investing agent, you could do deals like this, okay? Think about this one for a second, the 300 commissions. This is how I came to the 300 commissions, because I was writing my notes before making this video, right? And so when I thought about it, I said, okay, this deal, if you adjust for inflation, is roughly $3.5 million. And that's not quite 3.6 to say 100,000 per month for 3 years, but it's close enough that we can kind of round there. And in fact, when you adjust for inflation, it actually is above the 3.6. I'm always conservative when I give my numbers. So we're talking $100,000 per month. Well, how do you get to $100,000 per month in real estate commissions? If your average commission is $12,000, 100 commissions, and actually I'll write this one out. You got 100 commissions times 12,000 equals 1.2 million. You have 12 months, you divide by 12, that brings you to 100K a month. So you have to do 100 transactions per year for 3 years to do what I did at 21 years old. I want to say this was probably my 7th deal, right? It wasn't my first deal. I have a video on that. It's not my largest deal. It was my largest deal at the time, right? When I was 21, this was my largest deal at the time. I've done much bigger deals since then. If you think about this, which one's easier to do? Is it easier to do one of these deals or 300 commissions? So substantially easier as an investor to put these kinds of deals together. But there's a couple keys to it. Number one, you have to know how to see hidden opportunities that other people don't see. Think about that other agent who did the CMA and told them I'm the idiot for overpaying at $635 when it's worth $550. Think about that. That agent knew I was buying all 3 in combination. That agent knew I was overpaying for the property based on his analysis and never asked the question, why was I overpaying? Why did I want 3 houses side by side? I guess he never played Monopoly. He didn't understand. Most agents don't have the eyes to see that these deals even exist. So sometimes these are on the MLS and they don't see it. The listing agent doesn't see it. Sometimes you have to find these off of the MLS. That's how I found this one. I told you this was my 7th deal at the time. About half the other deals that I found were on the MLS. The first deal that I did was on the MLS. I have that whole story. I'll link to that video in the description below. You have to have the eyes to see it. You have to have the confidence to go out and do it. And you have to know what to say to the investors so that you have the money to do it. because when you're doing this kind of deal, now I said it's my 7th deal, I had some money at the top, but my first deal, I had no money. That's why I chose that as my first video, because I had no money. At this point, I had money. If you don't have money, you need to know what to say to the passive investors to get money from them. To buy 3 houses side by side, I'm paying $1.9 million for. How did I do that? You have to know what to say. You have to know how to structure the deal. This is why I offer coaching. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching, in the description, I'm going to include a link to get on a call. And on that call, I'll teach you what exactly everything involved, what is everything that's involved in my coaching. But the premise is this. We set a goal of how to get you to $100,000 per month or above as fast as possible. I teach 7 different ways to get to $100,000 per month. The best is a hybrid option between all of them. I can teach you how to do 100 deals per year, okay? I've sold over $2 billion worth of real estate. I know how to do that. It's hard. I said I teach 7 different ways to get to 100 grand. The second hardest way to get to 100 grand is through real estate commissions, meaning 5 of the other options are on their own easier to get to, but the easiest to get to is all of them in combination working together in synergy to get you from where you're at today to this 100K a month. Now, 100K a month, that's a target. That's a goal. Will you hit $100,000 per month? That's on you. 99.9% of real estate agents never hit $100,000 per month. And it's probably, even higher than that. It's probably 99.9999, right? Never hit $100,000 per month. But very small percentage of agents do. Now, you could do one of these deals every 3 years and you hit 100K per month. Substantially easier. Does it mean you're going to do it? That depends on a lot of things. Depends on whether you're able to raise capital, whether you're able to find deals, if you're able to put the deal together in a syndication, write the offer, get the offer accepted. This is real estate. You can't control for market conditions. You don't know what interest rates are going to be in the future. You don't know what prices are going to be in the future. There's a lot of variability and there's a lot of risk involved. But I can tell you one thing. If you're going to focus on larger deals, it's way easier because you could do way less deals. 1 deal every 3 years versus 300 deals in the same time frame. Way easier to do 1 than 300. So if you're interested in coaching, click the description below. I'm going to be putting out videos like this on a regular basis. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time a video like this comes out. If you didn't understand anything in here, or maybe you have questions or you want to know more about it, comment and I'll either respond to your comment. I might even just make a video as a response to your question, right? So you're feeding me information of what content you want to see from me on this YouTube channel. And that's where I learn from you guys, is in the comments. I look forward to you learning more about what I offer and how these things work, because I want to see you succeed. I look forward to talking to you soon.